Welcome back with me to the channel Vision Dose, where today I'm hopefully, if my connection doesn't stop going out, going to be able to show you how ridiculously good this deck is. This deck is just broken. Just broken. And I'd jump on this quick if I were you, because apparently when set 4's coming out, Conman's going to be a 1-3, and this will not be a 2-5-6 when evolved, but a 2-4-5. Now, I want to point out, although I do say that with a bit of a, oh my god, I can't believe they're doing this kind of tone, I do think that's completely balanced, because I think this deck should not exist. But, yeah, usually I really wouldn't approve using these decks, but, there is at least some way to play around this, and people will know this is the meta. It's kind of shocking having ZMECH literally be the best zombie hero. I even seriously mean that. Like, ZMECH seems like the best hero in the game right now, and really, after all this, he's always been powerful, but this was just the kicker. Why did they give him this? This card, okay, this card isn't that useful for Brainstorm, unless you're going to be running Conman decks. This card isn't going to be that useful for, well, it could be, yeah, it's useful for Boogaloo for his card draw, I guess. But there's not much synergy there unless you're going to do it with Tankylosaurus. And it doesn't really fit in Infinity. So it feels like this card was made for ZMECH, and he really didn't need this boost. He's already good enough. But anyway, this deck has been dominating in ranked. I just lost the game, but that is not because I actually lost. In fact, I had lethal that turn and then I disconnected, so that's great. But yeah, this deck is just ridiculous. If you play a bit more risky, you can get 2-5-6 untrickables on turn 2, and into 6-7s with untrickable and frenzy, as well as a card drawn back on turn 3. Which is just ridiculous. That means you can get rid of massive chunks of their health. This deck can even go in the long game, even though it's an aggro deck, surprisingly well. Because there's there's 3 Stompodons in the deck. It used to be 4, but right, you know a deck is good when drawing Stompodon is a bad thing. Literally, Stompodon's only in the deck because he's the only long game value I have. That's literally the only reason he's in the deck. Otherwise, if this deck became aggressive enough to work without him, I would literally just drop him. Because Stompodon is too slow in this deck. Which is absolutely ridiculous. This deck is just, you Conman on 1, or you can put down your middle manager on 1 if you didn't get your Conman. But usually, if you have 4 Conmen, you will get your Conman. Oh wow, this is... Besides this environment, which isn't even that bad, this is basically the perfect starting hand. But since I have 4 copies of each of these cards, this isn't even that unlikely. And having do 3 damage is... this deck also makes use of all of ZMECH's superpowers. Do 3 damage to a plant and do 3 damage and 1 damage to all the plants have always been good, and there is never any time where they're not good. So that doesn't need any special integration. But Rockwall's really good with Stompodon, and Brute Strength is amazing with Quick Draw Conman, which means that basically every single power that ZMECH has is useful. And look at that, he's using a card that would usually be great value just to protect himself from this Conman, and the do 3 damage just ruins his plans. It completely is. That's gotten rid of a relatively pricey card, and just put me ahead. He's got extra sun production, but he still can't, keep up. So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to evolve this. Look at this nightmare of a board. It's turn 3. And I've already got him down a quarter of his health. Only charges block meter by 1. I've got him to use his super on turn 3. Surely that should be a sign this is a little bit broken. And you might be saying, oh, but yeah, you're running out of cards. Don't you worry. Like, half the cards in this deck draw more cards. Oh, now to be fair, he did manage to kill this. Usually they can't do that, but I guess they got Potato Mine. Surprising. Usually it's a bad idea to run it, but I guess it worked in this situation. Maybe Potato Mine would be good against Conman decks. But anyway, Disconaut is a bit of a... no, again, this is a sign that this deck is ridiculous. Disconaut is one of the weaker choices in this deck, but again, you've got to have something to fill out the deck. And Sugary Healthy Treat, I usually wouldn't put that in this deck either, because while it is a good value card, I usually wouldn't have that just because... there are Stompodon would technically be a better way of buffing, but it's just that this deck really profits from having cheap cards. So Healthy Treat is obviously a very cheap option that's also very effective. And look at that. He decided to leave this 5-6 just to try and deal with the con man. And they're not even going to be able to do it anytime soon. Oh no, we got Stomped On, so if things go south, we can just use that. And look at this. Look at this. Look at this massive advantage we have. Oh, I should have evolved that. Oh well. Oh, this is his win condition, I think. Strike through, and as you can see, it's not working out. I mean, to be fair, they removed the Disco Knot. But now you're going to prop my block. Oh, what am I going to get? Oh, Rock Wall. Now you're not going to kill that anytime soon. If I draw one going viral, it's game over too. Oh, this is also good because now everything in my hand gets +3/+3, and I draw 3 cards. And I make him draw a card, which triggers the con man. This is a 3-way combo. This is everything good for ZMECH. It gives you a health advantage, it gives you a stat advantage, and it gives you a card advantage. How ridiculous is that? Concede. Most of these games are won by concedes. They are not usually won by you actually killing them. They very rarely actually let you. They're usually just so horrified that this deck exists. Okay, usually I would be very ashamed of running decks like this, and these may be reminiscent of freeze decks, but the reason I hate freeze decks is there is no way to beat a freeze deck unless your deck is already a control deck, in which case, yeah, you can beat a freeze deck because you're a control deck, just don't play anything and kill the snowdrops when they play them. But this deck has counters, which is why I don't have that much, like, I do feel bad for the people I'm, like, beating, but at the same time, this deck has counters that you'd realistically see in the deck. All this deck needs is for someone to either be resilient, and Walnut's a very meta hero. Walnut's actually very good at beating this deck. Using Super, delaying everything by a turn on a deck that's so, like, fixed on just having a massive, like, being so far ahead of your opponent on the board, having just one turn of damage undone can be the end of you sometimes if you don't get your Stompedons and you don't get your card draw, or you're going virals. And thingy. Also, if you have good enough tempo, you can actually out-tempo this deck. This card is a bit more difficult, but on top of that, if you're not so lucky, you might not even get anything to Professional Evolve. You can evolve this, but this is an extremely valuable card that you do not want to lose, because this is a very important part of keeping your health advantage. Without this, sometimes you actually get killed before you manage to get everything out, and that's another counter to this deck. If you manage to just deal enough damage fast enough, you can actually stop people using this deck before they can bring out their fossil heads or doing enough damage with them, before they can go viral or their high stat minions, and before they can go stomp it on and go out of control. Now, a few of these things in the deck I would have more copies of, but I don't because I don't own enough copies. I would have 4 going virals, I only have 3. I do have 4 Stompedons, as I said, but I would not recommend having 4, unless you are having more games where you can't get a quick win. You get more of a mid-range win, in which case, yeah, go for it. I would run 4 of these, and I would run 4 of these, and the cards that you could think about taking out is a couple Plumbers. Plumbers are some of the best cards in the game, but honestly, Plumbers don't really fit with this deck. They're mainly just here to add a little extra control, because sometimes they can be, like, the thing that defines the game. Because it's not really a deck that you'd expect to see Plumbers in, so sometimes people put 2 health minions in front of, like, fossil heads, and when they have 5 health left and expect to survive, so you can just plumber and win. And again, another thing is, sometimes when you run out of steam with this deck, if they chum block every lane and you can't find going viral and they have like 2 health left, you know, plumber can also come in for the win. I would replace this environment, but it's really the only the only environment in this deck. If environments became meta, I would recommend you have 4 copies of this in the deck, but probably not. And more copies of Binary Stars. Most of this deck is supposed to be very cheap, and Binary Stars doesn't fit that. But obviously, having such high statted minions and then being able to double their damage is ridiculous. Plus, Binary Stars should be basically every ZMECH deck because of this. Binary Stars turns Missile Madness into basically a K-Explosion and a Chickening. A K-Explosion and a Chickening. That is 8 brains worth of value out of a 1 brain trick and a 5 brain zombie, and it's not like their ability is used up on that. So the value of that is just ridiculous. It is one of the best combos in the game, if you ask me. So anyway, I'm going to end this one here. I can't wait to see what horrible things I've caused if anyone actually watches this video and starts using this deck in competitive. It is a bit of an expensive deck, but yeah, it's a bit of an expensive deck. Hey, at least there's not that many legendaries. As I said, you don't really need the Stompidons. And even though I do recommend having more Banner Stars, I'm getting by with just one. And really, I don't get it most games. And if I do, it's usually my starting candidate. I have to recycle it. But anyway, I'm going to end this video here before I rattle on for ages.